And so today we are here. My name is Christina Smith, and I'm actually an integrative nutrition health coach, which basically means it's more than nutrition. Nutrition is just part of the deal. Your health has to do with self-care and nutrition and movement and a whole bunch of things. So today we're going to focus on manifesting our inner queen. Now, why would we want to manifest our inner queen? Well, the queen is the one who controls the rest of the players, right? She's the leader. She's just and she's fair, but she's highly respected, and people follow what she has to say, right? They have faith in what she has to say. A lot of information from her. So why do we want to manifest our inner queen? Well, a lot of us are living from our warrior, right? I know that's where I was living from, was my warrior, and I was really good at the taskmaster, right? At multitasking, playing all the different roles. I was really good at all of those things. However, my grace and my tactfulness, not always. I can get the job done, but sometimes it's with running people over. So we don't always want to do that, because that's not going to get us what we want out of life usually. It's just going to, it might get us what we want, but not with the outcome that we look for, right? Some people might be mad at us. We may have trampled a few people to get what we wanted, instead of being graceful and bringing out our queen who could negotiate with that instead. So we want to start understanding, what does it feel like to me to feel like a queen, right? So what are those feelings that come with feeling like a queen, at least for you? For me, it's abundance and freedom and inspiration and respect, and being able to do whatever I want and knowing I can, right? But what does it mean for you? So let's take a deep breath and relax. And let's talk about royalty. In fact, when I was coming up with the presentation and putting it together, I had this flashback to when I was about 7 or 8 years old, and I had a very good friend at the time, and we played together all the time. And this was before video games, so we weren't playing video games. We were playing pretend, right? House, doctor, all those things. Well, we loved to play the British royal family. It was our thing, the queen and the princess, right? And my friend, she always wanted to be princess. And I always wanted to be queen. So it worked out very well, very good friendship. And I think back to this and I wonder why, because when we're little girls, princesses are always highly valued, right? How many girls walk down a trick or treat with a princess costume on? Many of them. And it's because her dreams are made for her usually, right? It's a Cinderella story. She got rags to riches, or there's some kind of beautiful princess story to go with it. But then she gets married, and that's pretty much the end of those happily ever afters, right? We don't hear what happens later. I always wanted to be queen. When I saw Queen Elizabeth, I didn't see an older woman. I saw a woman who was, yes, short, but people, huge military officers, bow to her, stand up and watch her walk down that great red carpet. They had respect for her. She didn't have to smile at all the people for all of their approval, because she had already earned that. She was queen. So I really love the grace and the power and the respect of the queen. So today we need to know, before we begin, what does it feel like to you to be queen? There's no one right answer for everyone. We're all different, and we value different feelings. So don't censor yourself here. Whatever comes up needs to be honored. So close your eyes and take another deep breath. Focus on what it is for you to feel like queen. Is it grace and blessing, blessed, empowerment, confidence, respect, love, connection, freedom, vibrance? Picture your inner queen in front of you. What does her power feel like to you? Imagine yourself as that woman. How does it feel to stand as queen? And these words coming to you are pretty important. So if you have paper around, you might want to write them down so that you can keep them in mind later. And I'll give you a minute to do that. So now that we have those words, that's exactly what we're aiming at. Whatever those words are for you, that's what we want to aim at having in our lives, right? You want to aim at yours, I want to aim at mine, and they probably aren't exactly the same thing. So at this point, you might be wondering, what the heck does this woman know about being queen, right? I was not brought up royal by any means, so I don't know what it's like to have help prepare my meals or clean my house or have unlimited means. But what I do know is health, attitude, self-love, and perspective. Those are the things that change internally and create a sovereign about ourselves. When we think of our ideal queen, though, we don't think of the crazy schedules that they keep, right? The boring meetings and the events they have to attend, although I'm sure some of them are really fun. We want to focus on what it feels like to be in that position, because that's the piece we can use, and that's the piece that we can change. That's where our power comes from. And from having a royal perspective on our life to bring out the queen and all those feelings you wrote down. It's a choice. And again, how do I know that? Well, because I was a big, hot, unroyal mess most of my life. I had a rough childhood, persistent inner critic, and a ball of anxiety and worry. And then in 2008, on the outside, some people told me I looked like Superwoman. And on the inside, I looked more like a hot, stinking mess of a child having a tantrum. I was tired, I was angry, I was sad and ashamed all at the same time, all of the time. And I played all the roles, right? Mom, martyring daughter, workaholic, while being financially stressed and newly divorced. And I had real eras of depression. I don't even want to mention the self-care because there was no self-care to mention. You see, I grew up in a house where doing for yourself was a sin. So all of your time should be spent for the family or working or earning or producing, whatever it was. And me time came last, if it came at all. It wasn't until I got really sick over a decade of different symptoms, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And I went to lots of doctors and lots of specialists, and I saw lots of pharmacists, and nothing seemed to really help. And I realized that it had to do with how I was taking care of myself. I didn't really care about my body. I just jammed medications in, hoping it would just, boom, change it, right? So then I did focus on that because the medications weren't working and I was really ill. And I felt much better after I changed my nutrition, but I felt even more better when I started seeing that as a priority, as part of my self-care. I mean, eating well is part of self-care. There's a lot of energy that can go into it. So that's kind of how I learned. So the missing piece was self-care for me. And when I quit denying my body and my personal well-being the time and energy it needed to be honored, it really honored me back. So in 2008, these were all the things that I felt about life. It was unfair, and I was, the martyr, doing everything for everybody else. I was stealing time out of the night to get more stuff done. And my inner critic ruled. All of these things that are listed here, these were all of the stories I was telling myself. Now go back and remember what it's like to feel like queen, right? Because I know the first question I get from people, or the first excuse about self-care is, but I don't have time. Now, how many things do we do for so many other people, right? So we're choosing to be a martyr sometimes. Really think about it. Sometimes we are doing things that we are a little resentful for later, or we feel like we're being used, or somebody's taking advantage of us, right? Now that's our responsibility, and yet that's the martyr in us. And you can't be a martyr and a queen, just like you can't be a victim and a queen at the same time. The two just don't mix. A queen has power, and the martyr and the victim relinquish their power. So we have to keep in mind the queen energy. As we go through all these exercises, let's not shrink into our inner critic, which I will deal with later, but let's just think about our queen. In the meantime, if your inner critic comes up, or if she's in there right now going, this woman's full of it, well, then I want you just to acknowledge those messages. Write them down if you like. What is your inner critic telling you? There's no way I could find time to take care of myself. Whatever it is, I want you just for now to listen to it. And at the end of the webcast, the last bonus exercise, we're going to deal with that woman. But there are 10 lessons, and now there's only 45 minutes left, so I am going to get on it. So the first lesson in being queen, right? The first lesson I learned was life is unfair. Suck it up, buttercup. I had to give up the victim. So when I was in victimhood, I would have never admitted it, right? I'm not being a victim. I'm not making excuses. These are real, true reasons. And one of the most poignant times of my victimhood was during my divorce. I was cheated on, and I was lied to, and at the same time I was working hard, and I was telling the truth, and I was sacrificing, and he wasn't following any of the rules, right? This was my victimhood. This was all his fault. I had a lot of people on my side, but it wasn't enough. I was angry, and that anger ate me alive. It took my energy away from my son, and I was angry all the time. So why did I stay a victim so long? Well, because there's benefits of being the victim, right? I mean, there's a reason why we do these things, because they serve us in some way. So the benefits of being a victim for me was the attention and validation, right? Other people wanted to know about my divorce. What happened? What'd he do? Oh my goodness, he's so bad. I had a team on my side. They stood up for me, and they told me, that he's evil and I need to leave. And yeah. They were my cheerleading squad. And that felt good, right? It was safe because I no longer had power in the situation. If I am giving somebody else power, and I'm saying I have no other choices to do anything but to just sit here and be a victim, well, that's safe, right? I don't have to take any risks. That's nice. And how about responsibility? If somebody else is responsible for my decisions and what happens to me, I don't have to take personal responsibility. I didn't have to take responsibility for the fact that he was lying to me, and he did it over and over again. I mean, whose fault is that, right? Shame me once, shame on you. Shame me twice, shame on me. And I got to be right. And doesn't that feel good, right? The right fighter. It was great. My divorce was not my fault. But however, when we're the victim, we're also giving up all of our power. So we're saying that we have to sit here and wait to change our lives until something else happens or something else doesn't happen, right? And that's no way to live. So the first exercise is going to be to empower ourselves with I can and I will statements, right? So whenever we hear that inner critic, which is probably chitter chattering right now, we can say to her, I can stop listening to you. I can be healthy. I can be positive. I will take a walk. I can start small. I can take better care of myself. Whatever it is that she's trying to tell you you can't do, your queen will justify you. Your queen will tell you that you can. So let's make sure that we're telling ourselves I can and I will statements. And I think the biggest key to that is sometimes just recognizing the voice that's telling us I won't, because sometimes it doesn't say I can't, but it'll say, well, if you do that, then, right? That's the good one that I get. Well, I'm not saying you can't, but if you do that, then, right? So let's give all that up and just give ourselves better statements, because the internal stop sign goes up with the I won't and I can't. And we cut ourselves off from any creative or out of the box thinking. And that is where we're going to be able to solve the blocks in our lives and really get to the lives that we like, that we really want to have. So, moving on from the victim, nobody likes to talk about the victim. Lesson 2, the martyr. Now, this one's always a really fun one for me because nobody really likes to be the martyr either, right? And yet we do it to ourselves all the time. How many times do we say yes when we really want to say no? So, one of my favorite mentors and leaders is Ayanna Van Zant. And this quote is what always sticks with me. Take care of you and keep you whole and healthy. That doesn't mean that you disregard everything and everyone, but you want to come with your cup full. You know, my cup runneth over. Well, what comes out of the cup is for y'all, but whatever's in the cup is mine because I've got to keep my cup full. And we live in a culture of giving. It is great to give, and giving to ourselves should be a priority too. You know, like the airline directions, put your oxygen mask on before you attempt to put them on your children. Where would your children be if you did not take care of yourself in the moment? What if you pass out? Then no one is saved, right? So why do we do this to ourselves every day in life? Why do we tell ourselves that we have to be everything to everyone? Everything is so easy and accessible today that we cram so much in, right? We multitask, we multi-role. And what's the first thing that falls off of Superwoman's list? Care for herself, right? Just minimal, whatever she needs. She needs to get some calories in, that's about it. Yet when we care for ourselves, we're honoring ourselves. We're telling ourselves that we too are worthy of the care that it takes to stay healthy, happy, and sane in our worlds. And yet we still choose to drop that off. And this is where I hear women say, I don't have time. And there's a way we're going to make time. We're going to say no more often, and we're going to love it. Queens don't say yes to everything. They are fair and just, and they honor their limits. Being a martyr is not the queen's game. So let's try an exercise to reprioritize our day. So here is the exercise for lesson 2. We're going to give up the martyr and reprioritize. So the first thing we're going to do, and this will all be in an ebook that'll come out to you tomorrow. So if you are just feeling like chilling and watching, keep doing that. But the what we're going to do here is a triangle. Some people call it an upside down triangle. I'm not sure that triangle knows where its bottom is, but the biggest in priority in your life that this is your ideal life, right? What would you put as your most important priority for your ideal life? Now, hint, you should be somewhere near the top, but realistically, I'm not going to expect everyone to feel completely comfortable putting themselves on the very, very top. It's a learned selfish quality. It is recommended, though, by airline stewards, but if you feel that, putting something else before your own oxygen mask is more important, go ahead. And then fill it in with all the other things that you want to fill your life up with, right? So, for example, here's my ideal life, or at least during the summer when I can be in my garden. There I am modeling the self-care and me time right at the top. And then my family and my close friends, because there's no school and, people are around and vacationing and chilling. And I love that. And then my passion in my work, because that's where I get my moxie out. And my garden and relax and vacation. So ideally, this is how I would spend all of my time every day, right? So I want you to do that, and then we're going to go and build another triangle, and we're going to compare it to all the things that we currently do. So I spend most of my time doing this or that. And for time's sake, I'm going to whiz by these. And you can feel free to use the book and do all the exercises at your own pace. But here's my current, right? So my family and very close friends moved up one. True enough, my self-care does come down if I'm not focused on it. However, if you notice, 4 out of 5 of my priorities are on that list. Now, it wasn't always that way, right? So let's go back in the day to good old 2008, right? I had a very different looking triangle, and it probably only had 2 sections, one that said work and one that said time with child. That was what I did every day, unless you created another category for anxiety and worry, in which case that one may have gone to the top. So you can see that my triangles have changed, but it's been 7 years. It's been a very, very long journey. I didn't just happen upon it one day. So that's the exercise that we're going to do. Now, when you find the differences, what we want to do is adapt, right? We want to adapt those triangles so that we're starting to massage them and they're starting to mold to be exactly what we want. So as you can see, it's getting really close for me. So I'm really excited about that. And just one thing about boundaries, right? And where we get our time and how we give up some of these things. Every time you say yes, when you mean no, you're committing an act of self-betrayal. You're losing your own trust. You can learn to politely and respectfully decline to do what people ask you to do. And before you agree to somebody else's request, ask yourself if you really want to do what they're asking, and consider how you will feel after you perform the request. Will you feel bitter? Or are you going to feel like you really did something good? All right. So we're going to move on to lesson 3. This is a really short one, slide 1. Sleep your way to health, happiness, clarity, and focus. So sleep is so important, and often when we have all these roles, okay, I'm going to speak for myself. Because I have all these roles, I choose to do a lot of work or cleaning or crazy stuff from about 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. I love that time. There's no meals to be made. The dog doesn't need to go out. Nobody's going to bother me. Everybody's sleeping. I can just sit and focus for hours on end, and that thrills me. However, I tell myself, okay, I'll be up till 4, I'll sleep till, 10, and I'll get 6 hours of sleep. It doesn't happen. I'm still up at 8 a.m. So I have to be really cognizant of the amount of time that I sleep, because I know I get cranky. And this goes back to when I was a little girl. My mother would always tell me, you're tired. You must, you're cranky. You must be getting tired. And I would tell her no. And now, when I grew up, I realized that when I'm getting cranky, I'm probably really tired. Sometimes dehydrated, often tired. So make sure that you sleep. Schedule it in if you have to. Make sure that all your bedtime stuff is done before you need to be sleeping so that you can get 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And there'll be some tips in that ebook too about getting better sleep. But we're going to move on. So, lesson 4, finding our truths. We're going to move past our stories. So, how many times a day do we tell ourselves stories? And by stories, I mean anything simple, like perhaps a friend walks by you at a party and doesn't say hi and still hasn't called you back since the last time you left her a message. I know I start going, oh, I wonder if that friend is mad at me. Did I do something? What if, and all these stories start piling in, right? And I don't really know the truth. I don't even know that she's seen me or not. I'm just making this stuff up. And we also do it internally, right? We start making stories up about ourselves. Oh, I didn't get this right on the first try. I must really stink at this, or I must be a bad whatever, right? These are all the stories that we tell ourselves. So, so we need to talk about this and get it clear, whether it's with somebody else or whether it's with ourselves. And most often, it's about ourselves, right? So how do we move through the stories? How do we find the truth? Because it's all inside of us. We can clarify other people's perspectives and stories, but we can only change our stories from our inside, right? So let's try it. In exercise 4, this is our clearing for the soul, right? This is a really great model that I learned to use to communicate with other people. However, I think a lot of the funny work in this is that it's not really about the other people. It's all about your own story. So you really don't need the other person in order to clarify all this. So let's compare where I was, right, in my divorce, right? A little personal, but I want to get it out there because I want you to be clear on how we do this, because it's tricky. Our critic will tell us that we're kind of wrong, but let's go for it. So the first step is the data, right? So what is the data? In my divorce, the data was that let's just stick with one point. He lied. He lied to me a lot, over and over again. I'm sure there's other stories, but let's just go with that one. So then that's the data. That's it, right? Data is he lied over and over again, and now we're getting a divorce. So the feelings, well, I had a lot of feelings. I like to stick with the core feelings, which is sad, mad, glad, shame, fear. And so I would say I had all of those except for glad. I was sad, mad, ashamed, and I was scared. And the stories that were created from that, right? He lies to me because he thinks I'm stupid. He lies to me because he doesn't love me. I ignore his lies because I fear having to hold him accountable and having to live a life I had not planned. I would only act that way if he would only act the way I wanted him to act, right? If he would just be the man that I wanted him to be, or the man that mirrored me, that was honest and hardworking. If he just, right? Those are all the stories that if he could just do this, or if I could just learn to live with a liar, all of those stories that I was telling myself. And that's what was creating the angry and the mad and the feared, right? And that sitting in a victim. But in order to get out of the victim, we have to know where the truth is. So the truth is, I married a perpetual liar. He did not lie to me to hurt me. He did not lie to me because he did not love me. And at the same time, I could not support or participate in a relationship of lies. I had to leave, and I was sad that what I had planned for wasn't going to be. I needed to accept the truth, which was that he really wasn't going to change, and I wasn't going to be able to accept our relationship as is, right? And that's the bigger truth. The bigger truth is that I was madder at me than I was at him because I had stayed for years having him lie to me and thinking it would change, right? I'm the ridiculous one here. So the truth was, I was mad at me and I had to forgive myself. So that helped me. Lesson 4 helped me really dive in and find the truth behind all of that anger, right? It wasn't anger about him. That's why I was still so angry, even though I didn't care about him anymore. And it was much easier to let go of the relationship when I could find that truth, when I realized that it was just, look, he's vanilla and I'm chocolate and we're not mixing very well. So I want you to use that in your life and see how you can clear through that. And again, it'll all be in the ebook. So I know we're going really fast, but there's so much information. So we're going to move on to lesson 5, which is live authentically. Your strengths are what make you royal. So when we think about the royal family, each of the royals have a different personality. They have a different way about them, just like every human being, right? We're all individuals. And yet the crown fits them all. So it doesn't matter what your strengths are, you can still be a great leader and live authentically. So it's normal for us to compare ourselves to other women, right? That's one of the biggest things I see in our culture is women comparing themselves to other women. And we think that, oh, if I could only be like that or have that or do that, then I would be perfect or even worthy. And there's a phrase that I know some people know called compare and despair. When we compare ourselves, we are measuring our values and our characteristics against somebody else's. And why are we doing that? You know, it's like a competition because we're measuring. Are we better? Are we less than? And either way, we're going to feel pretty bad about it, right? Because usually it ends in, oh, it's not fair, or I wish I had, right? And we don't need to compare ourselves against anything other than who we were, 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Are you growing? You need to measure yourself against yourself. So, the exercise for the lesson 5 to live authentically is to look over these 24 signature strengths. And these 24 signature strengths will, pop out in different, weaknesses and strength levels for you. And we all know that we can look at this and pick out a few that we're like, oh yeah, fairness. I mean, that is something right at the top of my list. That's something I am all about, justice and fairness in life. And that's something that I know that I focus on that I'm really good at. So, what are you really good at? When we work from these signature strengths, what our signature strengths are, they're like our free squares, like bingo, where you get that free square and oh, you only need 4 numbers because you're using the free square. I mean, it's awesome, right? You didn't have to do anything to earn it, and yet it's just as valuable as all the things that you had to work really hard for. So building momentum with your signature strengths is the way that you get to leadership. You can learn to improve the other qualities too as you go, some of your weaknesses, but start with your strengths. I mean, if you were an entrepreneur and you don't like to be in front of video, don't start on YouTube, go to Twitter or something, whatever it is, use your free squares. And now think of a situation that you're currently handling, right? Or that you have a current challenge in. What strengths show up? And which weaknesses are showing up or not showing up when you need them? And how can you use those strengths to their highest potential to make easy wins for you, right? Don't work hard if you can work smart. Alrighty. So moving right along, because we're already a little behind. Lesson 6, take risks, be seen, and quit playing small. Taking risks is a part of risks. That one's hard for me. Taking risks is a part of enjoying life, and yet we often play small, right? I remember when I was little and I was a dancer, I never danced for company. I saw it on TV how people would have their kids dance for company. No, that wasn't allowed. In my house, it was considered showing off. So I dimmed my light. I learned to stay in the corner rather than shine. I also learned that it took responsibility to be great, right? Because when I did well at competition and recitals, they would put me in bigger competitions and higher age groups, and they would push me harder, and my mistakes meant more. And so I stopped enjoying it, and I stopped really participating, showing up really. My parents made me go to classes, but I stopped showing up really. And suddenly they let me quit. So I got to stay small, right? And that was safe because I didn't have to be told about how I'm making all these mistakes all the time. So what are signs in your life that you're playing small, right? What is it that you want to do that you're kind of holding back on? Do you stay silent because you'd rather have that than a confrontation with someone? And we make so many reasons, right? There's so many reasons why living our ideal life becomes smaller over time. When we are little girls, we want to be queen and we're told we can do anything, right? Well, many of our parents told us that, you can do anything, you just got to earn it, or, you just got to plan, or whatever they told us, educate yourself. And we believed that, right? So some of us really believed we could grow up and be Queen Elizabeth. And so over time, we get these, slaps in the face of reality, or what I thought was reality, right? These learning moments. Some people call them failures, but I call them learning moments, right? We get those over time and we start playing smaller and smaller. We start going, well, I really don't need that big house that I wanted on that farm. Maybe just a couple of acres and a mobile home, right? Or whatever it is in life. Maybe it's not that drastic, but I mean, we start whittling down our dreams into something that feels tangible, something that feels achievable, right? Instead of thinking bigger and bigger and pushing ourselves to do whatever it is that we want. Whether that be a royal lifestyle or a nature worshiping hippie, right? We tell ourselves so many ways why we can't or we won't, right? That's my old personal story is I'm not worth it. I don't deserve it. Everything that goes wrong is a sign to stop, right? It's not just a challenge, it's a sign that this is not going to work, right? If I don't get it right the first time, then it's not worth it. So, why do we come up with all this? Because it's really scary to do new things, right? There's a word I'm going to bring up later that you might really enjoy. It's called frixiting, right? So it's when something's really freaky, scary, and crazy, exciting all at the same time. I mean, and that's where we get our joy from. That's where we get our adrenaline pumps, right? Because we're doing something new and we're mastering something new. We're growing, we're having personal development. That's where all the exciting stuff comes from. But it is scary because there's usually risk involved, right? Loss of time, loss of money, the emotional vulnerability, approval of other people, your focus, whatever it is. We see what we are risking somewhere down and we tell ourselves, no, it's not possible. We are focused on scarcity. I have so much time, money, emotional strength, confidence, right? There's only so much of it and it's limited. And the truth is, if we see ourselves as not having enough of these things, time, money, etc., we will continue to consciously or unconsciously make it that way. And what does all this have to do with being queen? Well, royalty doesn't have a scarcity perspective, right? There is plenty of everything because they can delegate or hire help, to all that to free up their time. They have to be seen every day, not care about anybody else's opinion. They do as they choose without thought of whether they can. Of course they can do anything. They're royal, right? It's no different for us other than the gold bars and maybe the really big, bank account. And some of these we could even achieve with, some extra steps. So instead of looking at the scarcity, we have to see the abundance and we have to break things down into achievable bits, right? So for lesson 6, our exercise. Uh-oh. Hey, how? You see I got my tiara on? You see this? Oh yeah, I'm doing it. Let me find my slides because I just lost them somewhere. Where did they go? There they are. There they are. Okay. I mean, I know you want to look at my tiara and everything, but let's get back to this. Okay, so exercise 6. We're going to make 2 lists on these, on exercise 6. And again, we don't have a whole lot of time because I'm actually running a bit behind because I blabber on and on and on. I just love this stuff. So the first is a bucket list, right? Now, don't get worried about this. I had a friend who was a little worried about a bucket list. Now I got a whole list of things that I got to do. I don't want to do all these things, right? It doesn't mean that we're going to do all of them, but on our bucket list for today's reason, we're going to look at all those qualities that feels like a queen, right? All those things that feel like a queen. Now, what are things that we could put on our bucket list that would help us feel like a queen? So if I want to be graceful, do I need to take dance lessons, or should I sit on a mountain in Tibet for 6 months? Whatever it is, what do you need to do? Maybe you want to lose your 9-to-5 job and do something you're more passionate about, right? What does feeling free mean to you? Is that a word that comes up for you? Whatever those things are, you want to write some things down that would help support us that we might really want to do, right? And this may change over time. And then the second one is going to be things that bring you joy. So things that bring me joy, being in my garden, playing with my dog, laughing with my kid, playing water guns with him, those types of things. Those are the things that bring me joy. And maybe some things that I haven't done in a while. I haven't painted in a while. I love to do that. So I would put something like that on there. So we're going to make a list of that. And then we're going to look at these lists, right? Because when we look at these lists, we'll notice on the bucket list, there's going to be some bigger things, right? Maybe bigger things we've never tried before, really. So those might take a little bit more planning. But even some of those may be free and available to do now. We just have chosen not to do them yet, right? But then we're going to look at the things that bring us joy and how many things on that list are available to us almost every day, and yet we choose not to do it. Standing in the rain, putting my toes, like I said, in my garden. It's one of my favorite things. I love summer for that. So how many things do we choose not to do for ourselves that are just here, right? We could give up picking up the toys for the 100th time a day and perhaps, take a bubble bath instead, because those stinking toys are going to be there tomorrow morning anyway. So do some of the things that are on the things that you enjoy list every day. And that you can consider as bumping yourself up on that triangle, right? As more important. That's self-care. Picking up those toys is not self-care. I don't care how you try to excuse it. So let's move on to lesson 7. So lesson 7, forgive yourself, others, and even the haters. Now this one's really hard for me too. They were all hard for me. That's how I learned them all, right? It's hard to learn a lesson unless it's really a struggle for you, because then you learn all the details to go along with it. So forgiveness. Royalty does not burn bridges, does it? Queens are graceful and compassionate, even to haters. And haters, are always going to attack the confident and the ones with moxie, right? So don't listen. A queen is blessed and blessing, meaning she loves people even when she does not understand their perspective. It is not from that weakness that she forgives, but it's from her knowledge that by doing so, the haters have no power over her. She doesn't waste her energy on gossip or bitterness. because it bleeds energy away from what we want, right? When we're spending time being angry or holding something against somebody, that's energy that we could be spending into things that we really enjoy instead. So the inner critic will go crazy at forgiveness, right? I mean, that's when they're going to tell you, they're going to justify why you're right and why you can be angry, and you don't have to go through all that. So I promised how to control that inner critic, and I'm going to not control her, but deal with her. I'm going to do that just a little bit later, but keep listening to the messages that she has for you. Like right now, what is she saying? Forgive a hater? Ugh, right? I mean, you know that ex-husband, he can always get on your nerves. Surely you can't forgive him, right? That's what my voice says. You can't be graceful. You don't deserve a crown. Listen to all those voices, all those messages that it has for you. And you'll realize that all of your anger is going to eat you up, right? And the anger that's even more important is with yourself, right? So the exercise 7 is to write letters to those you need to forgive and make yourself first. If you make yourself first on the forgiveness train, I promise you it's going to make it easier to forgive others. It's just the way that it goes. You start having compassion for yourselves, it's a lot easier to have compassion for other people, to let go of their flaws, right? To see them as human too. And then after we write our own letters and we tell ourselves what we need to keep boundaries on or accountabilities on, we're going to write a letter to whoever else we need to forgive. And you can give it to them or not, because remember, your anger or whatever you're holding against them is not about them, right? It's about you and the story that you have about it. They don't really necessarily need to know unless there's been a strain in that connection. Then you may want to give them something or at least discuss it with them and clarify so that that wall in your connection comes back down and you guys have a clear connection. So, for example, I know you must be thinking, how do you forgive that man, right? Because I'm a right fighter and I know that everybody's on my side here, right? So, with my ex husband, I did do it in a letter and I never had to give it to him because I realized it wasn't for him or even about him. I did, however, vow in that letter to protect our connection because we had to both parent my son and I wouldn't want it to be civil. I would protect it by making strong boundaries. And he didn't need to have the information about my boundaries because they became simple and I enforced them, so he didn't really need to know unless he crossed them. And it goes like this: I speak to him about data only, flights, dates, locations, how he is doing in school, medical info, and that's it. No, how do you do? How's life? If I were in a social situation and I have to small talk to be civil, I'll do it. I just don't hear him. I don't listen to the words. I don't let all of that stuff creep in and then I wonder later whether or not he's BSing me again, right? I just don't care. I'm not listening. I really have no interest in what you have to say unless it's about my son. And that's the boundary I have made, and it's made my life so much easier. So, in this lesson, when you get the ebook, I'd like you to go through it and really think about what is the forgiveness that you need to offer, whether it's to yourself, whether it's for others, or and make boundaries, right? What is that forgiveness? Is there a reason to make boundaries? Was it a one-time, you know, problem, or is this a consistent problem that you really need to make some boundaries about? So that's what we want to think of when we think of getting rid of these chains of forgiveness, or I'm sorry, not of forgiveness, but the chains of anger and sadness and disappointment and all of that stuff that comes when we need to forgive someone. And moving on, because we're already 10 of the hour. Lesson 8, letting go of the outcome, right? This is something us multitaskers and warriors, man, this is hard. It's hard not to control everything or believe that you even have the control over everything, right? So, did you ever notice though that a queen, she gets so much stuff done, but she doesn't actually do anything, right? I mean, have you ever seen her wash dishes or clean a clean a carpet or anything? A queen doesn't have time or energy to focus on these details. She delegates. She knows her boundaries and she doesn't overpromise or overwhelm by standing up to volunteer for PTAs, undesired projects, or other people's responsibilities. She does what is necessary and what she loves. That's it. That's all she does. Necessary, I love. And she is still valued and loved for who she is, not how much she can do. So that's something for us to really think about, is that we often value ourselves by how much we can do. I often value myself by how much I'm getting done. So it's something that we need to start thinking about. So what is the exercise for lesson 8, right? So what do we do to stop controlling everything? Sometimes we do so much, right? So we do all of these things and we can let a lot of them go, right? So make a list of all the things that you don't like to do, right? Get your stinking time back. All the things that you think is a waste of your time, or the time could be put to better use, or things that just aren't important. Back to the toys. If you have young ones, I promise you those toys are going to be there every day for years. Every day they'll magically make it to the same spot they were in yesterday, even though you've picked them up 6 times. There is no reason to waste your time on that. Sure, scoot them out of the walking path so you don't step on a Lego, but that is one thing that I was so driven on, is I am not picking up the same toys every 5 minutes. I'm just not doing it anymore because I had more important things to do with my time. So we have to think, how important is this? If it does need to get done, can somebody else do it? Can a family member do it, right? Am I doing everything in this house and, not expecting any help? It's important to get your kids to help you, and so that they can learn the responsibility, or your husband or whoever. And then, yeah, find your way of getting rid of it, right? Barter services, excuse me, barter services with a friend, or consider just dropping it. Like I said, just don't pick up those dang toys. They're going to be back tomorrow. So that's how we're going to do that. Now, this one does take a lot more thinking, so you're going to have to use some of your signature strengths, right, to see how your queen can negotiate some of these things. Maybe get some childcare so you can get some cleaning done, or get some work done, or if you're an entrepreneur, maybe start a new business or get a new product, whatever you want to do. The important thing is that we make sure that the time that we have is valued, right? There's no sense if you are an entrepreneur and you make, such and such an hour, that if you're wasting time cleaning and you could be using that money or using that time to make more money, why would you clean your own house if it was cheaper to pay somebody else? I mean, unless you really love cleaning your house. I'm not here to judge. So, lesson 9, learn to thrive instead of survive. Now, this is probably one of my favorite topics. I could go on forever about it. So I'm not going to, because I should probably just make another video about it. But we're going to give up survival mode, right? Because survival mode, not a royal mode. Queens thrive. They thrive because they seek out opportunities to grow, and they challenge themselves and they innovate. They thrive because they see abundance and not scarcity. Scarcity is a survival mode tactic, right? Intuition, passion, possibilities rule sovereigns, where others only see risk. So let's look at surviving. Surviving has to do with achieving, goal seeking, getting those goals, those motivations, and moving forward. Surviving is a warrior's mission. It's a perfect warrior's mission. Achieving is great. I'm not against it, unless it's creating havoc in your health with stress, right? So if it is, then we might want to look at thriving, because I think the two of these go together very well in life. However, I would live in the thriving, right? So thriving is about enjoying life, right? They're focused on enjoying life, not necessarily the goals. They're inspiration focused. They're focused on those feelings they want to feel. They manifest things where survivors achieve or earn, right? And they see abundance everywhere. They don't worry about surviving. They have enough. So, like I said, the survivor is the warrior, sees the mission, completes the mission. Thriving and inspiration, a queen's game. They're focused on the intuition and the things that they desire in life, right? We want to be focused on the things we desire, not the things that we're goal seeking and motivated for. They manifest their inspirational feelings, they don't achieve them. So, how can you bring your queen in where your warrior currently completely rules, right? How can you bring some grace in, or some freedom, or some abundance? There are often times that we could bully down the door to get the mission done, yet if the villagers are mad, in the end, is it worth it, right? So if we're just bullying down the door, is it really worth winning, right? Or surviving? We don't want to live that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to start listening to our intuition, right? So this one's a really hard one for people sometimes, because we don't take time to meditate or have quiet time or me time, right? And I'm not talking in the bathroom with the door locked. I'm talking real me time. So step one, probably the harder of the two steps, right, is to hear that inner voice. And that's not even the hearing part, that's just the preparing. So center yourself and hear your inner voice by meditating, like I said, or you can even do it by prayer. There's so many ways that people do this, but you have to be quiet. It's a soft voice. It's not as loud as that critic, right? The inner voice, the intuition, the good one, that one's going to be soft. You really have to feel it. You kind of have to really look for it. So think about your big goals and desires and really focus on that higher queen power, right? And let her guide you. Let her tell you where you need to be looking for resolutions to your challenges. And then the last one, find your tribe and be a leader. So people who wear a crown, they can't hide, right? It's easier to follow a crowd, but when you wear the crown, you can't really follow the crowd, right? The crowd kind of follows you. It means making a decision when nobody else wants to. It means having inner wisdom that guides you, even though other people may not approve, or they, might start hating on you. It also means feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And this is where I call that for exciting, right? It's for exciting. So when I left my job as a full-time marketer to become an entrepreneur, right? That was for exciting. So for exciting. It was so scary not to earn a paycheck, because that's how I was raised. It was paycheck to paycheck. That is just too bad. That is how it goes. But then I decided to go out on my own and go, ooh, I hope I make a pay. So it was scary, but so exciting, because now I get to do what I like to do, right? So I had to step out. I had to make a choice, and I had to find a new tribe. The people that I hung out with in 2008, many of them are not close friends anymore, because they no longer fit my tribe. I needed a different tribe to keep me healthy. And so I found a new tribe. I found several new tribes. One of them is Women Within. And if you know nothing about them, really look at it, womanwithin.com. It's a great community of women that really taught me how to step into my own power, how to be in a community of women, be loved, and really be able to be seen without being seen as showing off or snobby or whatever judgments we have about ourselves, stories we have about ourselves, right? So this is the last of the 10 exercises. There is a bonus, so hang on. So we're going to quit following, right? So step one, we're going to think about the leaders that we look up to. Who are the people that do the same type of things that we're passionate about, that we love? What are their top qualities? Now those qualities, which ones do you share? Which ones do you have? See, that's your free square. You're going to use that to find your own tribe. And then how do you already express some of these values, right? Even if you're not the strongest in those values, those other values that aren't your signature strengths, in what ways in other parts of your life may you already be expressing those values? So say you love that Danielle Laporte is confident, right? So even though you may not be confident in your work or what you're passionate about, maybe you're confident at home, right? So what is it that you do at home or with your family that makes you feel confident? How can you bring those feelings into your work life, right? So that you're getting more of the good stuff and kind of crowding out the bad stuff. And then as we do that, we're going to use our strengths for momentum. And the stronger our strengths get, the more out of the box thinking we're going to be able to use them for. So again, this is all going to be in the ebook. And we're over the hour, but I really wanted to bring you this exercise about dealing with that inner critic, because I told you to listen to her all webcast. And it'd be really irresponsible of me to leave you without really dealing with her, right? Now that you've been listening to her for an hour, that'd be awful of me. So first thing, you have to listen to her. That's what we've been doing. Ignoring her isn't going to make her go away. You just fight with her and struggle with her, and whatever you resist will persist. That's an Eckhart Tolle saying that I will always remember when it comes to the inner critic. Whatever you resist will persist. So we can't struggle with her. We can't ignore her or, try any of those things. We have to listen to the stories that she's telling us. So listen to the story and then find the truth, right? Go back to exercise 4 when you get the ebook and find the truth in the story that she has to tell you. Go back, figure out the data, the feelings. What are those stories coming from? And then, what is the truth about that? And then honor her. Let her know that she's safe. For me, my visualization is I see a woman kind of like the one in the picture, right? This old crankety crank. And she's in a rocking chair, and I bring her a cup of tea, and I bring her a little blanket and put her next to a little fire in the house, and we just rock her until she goes to sleep. Because I tell her, I've heard everything that you have to say, and that's not working for me. But I appreciate you wanting to keep me safe, right? Because remember, she is there to keep us safe. That's really what she wants to do. She really doesn't want to ruin our lives. That's what I like to believe. She really just wants to keep us safe and make sure that we know where our limits are, where she thinks our limits are, right? Because we don't really have them. And that is it. So that was at least 11 exercises, if not more, with little ones jammed in there. And you'll get a whole book that I've put together probably within the next 24 hours. And if you missed any of this, you can always go back and replay it. This is a Me First program. So if you've been following all that stuff and you're like, there is no way I can implement all of that without some help, well, this Me First program will really help. It is self-paced, or you could do the 30-day group program. The 30-day group program will be starting on September 15th. But if you have any questions or you want to know more about it, feel free to go to thewholefulliving.com/go/mefirst, and you'll learn all about it. So with that, I am actually going to put myself back on. If I can figure it out. Here I am. Hi. So that's all I had. If you guys have any questions, I have a Periscope so if you're on Periscope, you got to see me for a whole hour. So I have both of them running. So just leave a question. I can't really see the comments in Periscope right now because I am busy. It's not a normal Periscope. So, but I will be on the Periscope more often. But email me or leave them in the group chat on the Google Hangouts. And I am so happy you joined us. With that, I will say goodnight. Thank you.